What's up, guys? This is Jay Griff. Welcome back to the Dark Souls 2 Blog of Pain. Today's episode, a worthy successor, but have they gone too far? I'm not going to be talking about the plot or anything too specific on this episode. I'm just going to be talking about what I've noticed in the next few areas that I've been working through, or the last few areas, and how it compared to my experience going through Dark Souls 1 and basically stacking up to that experience. I was starting to think that Dark Souls 2 might actually be a little too easy, even for a seasoned Souls player like me, which is what a lot of the reviewers have actually been saying, is that the game starts off strong, but starts to get too easy. Um, so we talked about the areas I'd been through, the four bosses I had fought. Well, the area after that, I blew through it, completely blew through it. The only reason I even died was twice in the same spot. I walked off a pier because it's really dark down there and I wasn't using a torch. So that time it wasn't really the game, it was me thinking I know where the paths are. I don't need to use this torch right now, and just straight walked off twice. So that was really good. But the enemies didn't kill me. The boss, I destroyed it. Completely destroyed the boss in the area. And so I started to think, maybe this game really is too easy. You know? Like maybe it's because I'm still using that terrible shield from the beginning of the game. I've been upgrading my weapons, a certain amount. Um, Upgrading isn't as easy as it used to be because you can't buy the materials anymore, so you have to find them all. Well, you don't have to find all of them, but the amount that the blacksmith sells is limited. So you can't just experiment with the weapon types. Once you decide to start upgrading something, you need to keep upgrading it, or you need to not upgrade it at all to preserve your materials, because there's not a whole lot of them. But so I made the jump from that area into the area called Lost Bastille, which is this big ass castle. I'll talk about my theory on what it actually is in a different episode. Um, but I had started doing a recon by force of new areas when I went into them, which is that instead of charging in blind by myself, risking all my souls and my humanity, what I've been doing is when I reach a new area, I'll talk to whatever NPCs are there. But then when I get to the first bonfire, I drop my summon sign and I just wait. And I usually only have to wait about 30 seconds before another player summons me into their world. And then I'm conducting recon by force as a phantom, where I'm just following this player, I'm helping him out, I'm learning what the enemies are in the area, where they're at, I'm learning the layout of the area, I'm getting some, you know, oversight on how to properly navigate it or how to not navigate it in some cases, where I follow players down paths that lead nowhere but to complete and utter death and disaster. And I do that in a way that doesn't risk my souls or anything. So I've been sort of learning the areas and then charging back in myself. Usually not with the help of phantoms. I don't particularly like bringing the phantoms with me unless I'm going to fight the boss, because there are certain environmental things that they can trigger that maybe I don't want to trigger. Like one time I had to get an enemy to knock a barrel down a stairway at me so that it would hit a wall and open a path to a secret bonfire. And every time I approached it with phantoms, they would charge headlong up the damn ramp, and the guy would send the barrel in the wrong direction. And I'm just sitting there like, you stupid motherfuckers. Do you not know that this is here or something? Because I noticed it immediately. So I've stopped. I usually don't have phantoms with me unless I'm going after a boss, and it's getting harder and harder to find phantoms in the later areas. I don't know if that's just because there's more players in the lower level zones, and people are rage quitting and not playing as much in the other areas. I don't know what's going on, but it's getting harder to find people to summon. But so I was doing one of these recons by force, and in Las Bastille, and I was following this player, and he eventually hit a point where he went through a fog wall, and I was like, hey, cool, that's probably the boss room. But instead of the message that you get when that happens, which is that whatever their name is has challenged the boss of the area, and that's the game letting you know, follow the player into this boss room or we're kicking you off. That didn't happen. Instead, I got the message that so and so has left the area. So I was like, okay, so that lets me know I don't even bother, summoning phantoms up to this point because you're going to cross into a different area, and once you do that, your phantoms can't follow you. So I went back up there by myself, and doing my thing, and I walked in there, and I was immediately shocked that music kicked in. And in Dark Souls, there's only music in the hub world and the boss fights and maybe in cutscenes. And it wasn't a cutscene, so I was like, this is a boss room. Wait a second. And the next thing I noticed is that there's not one boss life bar, there's three. And I had wandered into a boss room of a boss called the Ruin Sentinels, which, if you remember from my previous blogs, you know that fighting when there's two enemies is bad. And now there's fucking three of them. So here I was walking along starting to think, this game is too easy. I'll just walk in here and, oh my sweet God in heaven, this isn't good. But I managed to take them down, and I managed to do it on the first attempt. And that really surprised me, considering that this is a boss fight where you not only I not only didn't summon help, you can't summon help. So it's kind of like a roadblock. And I'm wondering if the only reason I made it through is because I am, I have a lot of experience to fall back on with this series. But I don't think it's that simple, because I point at the fact that it's the life gems. It's those damn life gems that you find literally everywhere. I have over 50 of these things. And popping one slowly fills your health bar over a couple seconds. It's about 50% of the health that I have now, which means, pop 2 life gems, I get a full heal. And you can still move around, albeit slowly, when he's using them, whereas your Estus flask takes longer to use, and you don't move at all, and it's still gradual too. So I've stopped using Estus flasks in boss fights. I've switched completely to the life gems, and I have so many of them that I don't need to accept risk. In Dark Souls 1, you had so few Estus flasks, you really needed to be careful about when you were using them, because if you ran out, all you had to fall back on was humanity, and you don't really want to just be popping humanity for healing, because it's a very limited supply. I'm actually kind of glad that humanity now, the human effigies, don't heal you, so that temptation isn't there. But and it was a long boss fight. It probably took me about 10, 12, 15 minutes. But I still took them down, and the only reason for that is because I have so many of these life gems that I could fall back on as I slowly whittled them down, kind of laming it out, as they say in the fighting game community. But it was also, a very good boss fight in that it shocked me, it scared me. I understood the gravity of the situation, not being able to summon in any help, and I had to be real careful, fighting them. They were a good boss. It was a really good fight. But I feel like if it weren't for all those life gems, that would have probably taken me 3, 4, 5 attempts before I could really nail their pattern and take them out properly. So all of that happened, and that sort of reinforced what I was thinking about the game. It's like, okay, yeah, maybe it is pretty good. Maybe it is a good successor. I wander into the next area, which is Sinner's Rise, end up at the bottom of this tower, where I find the first summonable NPC in the game that I've seen so far. Though it's possible I've bypassed some because I had human players out and couldn't see the summon signs. But so I summon this woman because I can see that the next area is filled with water, and that's never good because that really slows you down. And the creatures in this area rocked my shit. I died twice trying to get through this area because they're just so powerful and difficult to fight, and if it weren't for the other NPC that was with me, it wouldn't have fucking happened. But, made it through that, eventually get to the boss on the other side. And the boss on the other side was a tried and true Souls boss. He was awesome. He was huge. He was fast, and he was in this big, like a cell. I think we came into his cell because he was chained up. But what he did was he breaks his chains and he extinguished the torches, so the boss arena went completely dark. And the result was, even though I could still see him because of the brightness settings, my lock on had a really short range. So you had to close with the enemy even to fight with ranged weapons, because aiming them is not very easy if you can't lock on. So that forced you to fight this enemy on his terms, basically. And he was really, really good fight. And I've also got a theory on who he really was, but I won't talk about that in this episode. But again, these healing items, I feel like I could have dragged that fight out way longer than I did if I needed to. But it was still a really good fight. And then went to the next area, Huntsman's Copse. And here it really started up again, where I was like, these enemies aren't challenging. These areas aren't challenging. I'm able to slowly move through them and take my time, and I can kill everything, even the larger enemies that I can tell are supposed to be more impressive and more intimidating. They don't hold a candle to like the old Black Knights from Dark Souls 1. When you ran into a Black Knight in Dark Souls 1, shit was on. It had gotten real, because you were going to have to really fight to bring one of those bastards down. And they didn't have an aggro range. They would follow you until you died if you got their attention. One of you had to go once you taunted one of those out. Even if you went to a bonfire, they would follow your ass there too. And they could, I don't know if it was a glitch, but I've seen times where people rested at bonfires, which is supposed to reset the enemies, but as soon as they stood up, there he was, just, gotcha, bitch. And they were dead. And I was sort of going through that, and as I was thinking this to myself, I got jumped by an enemy that I couldn't tell if he was fighting me with a rake or what, because it happened so quickly that he just comboed and destroyed me. And I went back for more to be like, okay, it's the Revenge Edition now, because I know he's there, and he's destroyed me again, because he was so much faster than me and so much stronger than me. And so I came back and I used some of my lightning bolt, and it was still difficult to bring him down before he made it to me, and took him out. And I was like, geez, okay, maybe there is like a Black Knight equivalent here. I've discovered they're called Purgatory Guardians, and they're blocking my entrance into another area that I probably shouldn't go into yet. But I took him down, got all cocky again, went up this ramp past him, and I was like, yeah, so that was cool, and there will probably only be one of him. 4 of them. Cut to me running like a bitch through the entire area, just, oh, no, not like this. Make it back to the bonfire, think, okay, maybe I can light it up. Nope, dead. Dead on the ground. So yeah, definitely want to say Dark Souls 2 is proving to be a worthy successor to Dark Souls 1 in terms of its difficulty. But still, maybe they've gone too far in revamping the healing system. I think there was no reason to mess with the way the Estus flasks work. I think there was no reason to turn healing items into consumables and to give you so goddamn many of them, so that even if you really, really suck, you don't necessarily break the game. It's going to come down to my personal taste, which I don't think I'm ever going to prefer the slow, gradual healing system to the Estus near instant effect that was in Dark Souls 1. But that's just personal taste. So, next episode of the Dark Souls blog, I'm going to talk about my theories on the plot going on with the areas that I'm in. I don't know that they're holding any sort of water with the plot that I'm slowly uncovering from the NPCs and from the items, but it's also really hard to tell how much time has passed. So I'm not sure if like the new names and the names of the different kingdoms are throwing me off simply because there's been several hundred years. So new kingdoms rose in the same spots and they didn't call things the same. And as they say, he who wins the war writes the history. So the NPCs might deliberately be telling us things again that aren't true or that are heavily slanted. Dark Souls relies very much on the concept of the unreliable narrator. So there's mystery out there, and I'm just trying to solve it, and that's what we're going to talk about next time. I'm Jay Griff. Thanks for listening, guys.